ever looked at something destined for the trash and wondered, what if it could become magical? In today's video, you're about to see ordinary objects, milk jugs, bottles, even old suitcases, transformed into whimsical fairy corners that feel straight out of a storybook. Welcome to Mind Over Decoration. This video is all about you'll never throw bottles away again. 17+ summer fairy garden ideas too magical to ignore. Inside, you'll find timestamps so you can jump directly to the ideas that inspire you most. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, and if something sparks your imagination, take it, play with it, and make it your own. Maybe to you, I'm just another face on a screen. But behind this content, there's a real story, and a real family. Every like, every comment, every subscribe, it truly matters. You're not just supporting a creator. You're helping a dream stay alive. When the leaves begin to fall and the air turns crisp, the garden takes on an entirely different character. Suddenly, the smallest corner becomes alive with imagination, and what was once a forgotten household item finds new purpose. Imagine holding an empty milk jug in your hands, something most people throw away without a second thought. Now, picture it transformed into a hobbit doorway, standing quietly among marigolds and chrysanthemums, a whimsical portal into another world. The milk jug, once pale and ordinary, becomes rounded and inviting. Its surface is painted to resemble aged wood, the kind of timber you'd expect to see in the rolling hills of the Shire. A little arched door is carved or painted at the front, with moss climbing over its frame. Vines curl around the edges, and a miniature lantern hangs just above the entrance, casting a warm golden glow as dusk approaches. It feels almost as if, at any moment, a small hobbit or perhaps a curious garden fairy might step outside, carrying a tiny basket of herbs. Placed at the base of a garden wall or nestled between stones, this creation does not shout for attention but whispers softly, inviting passers-by to look closer. Children see magic here, adults remember the tales of Tolkien or the warmth of childhood fantasy. It becomes more than decoration, it's a story frozen in time, a doorway to imagination itself. In the background, chrysanthemums bloom richly, while sedum autumn joy turns a rosy pink. Pumpkins rest casually nearby, completing the autumn atmosphere. The milk jug doorway does not feel like an artificial addition, rather, it blends into its surroundings, part of the natural rhythm of the garden. Each detail, tiny steps made of pebbles, a leaf carved into the handle, a ring of mushrooms at its feet, adds to its charm. This upcycling project reminds us that beauty does not come from expensive materials but from seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. A simple milk jug, reborn as a hobbit doorway, becomes a bridge between everyday life and the whimsical garden worlds that live in our imagination. And perhaps, if you lean close enough, you might just hear laughter echoing from within. Autumn has a way of turning ordinary evenings into something magical. The days grow shorter, the air is scented with dry leaves, and a hush falls over the garden as twilight arrives. It's in this moment that the imagination stirs, and even the simplest objects can transform into something enchanting. Picture a row of empty glass bottles, once destined for the recycling bin. Now, in the gentle glow of an autumn dusk, they shimmer as potion bottles, each carrying whispers of spells and fairy tales. The bottles are filled with colored water, perhaps tinted with food coloring or natural dyes, glowing in hues of emerald green, deep sapphire, ruby red, and golden amber. With small cork stoppers and hand-painted labels, Elixir of Autumn, Fairy's Brew, Hobbit's Harvest, they suddenly feel like treasures rescued from the shelves of an old wizard's apothecary. Arranged carefully on a rustic wooden shelf or nestled within the folds of ivy, they do not appear as trash, but as relics of wonder. When candlelight or small fairy lights are placed behind them, the bottles seem to come alive. They glow with a warm inner fire, casting jewel-toned reflections onto nearby stones, leaves, and petals. The garden responds in kind, marigolds catch the light, chrysanthemums nod their heavy blooms, and even the pumpkins lying quietly in the corner take on a magical aura. Visitors to the garden are drawn to them instinctively. Children believe they might actually hold potions, perhaps one to make the leaves fall slower, another to let flowers bloom through the frost, or a shimmering elixir that calls the fairies closer. Adults, too, feel the nostalgia, remembering tales of Harry Potter, wizarding worlds, and the comforting charm of fantasy. What makes this creation most special is its simplicity. Bottles that once held nothing more than soda or juice now carry the spirit of imagination. They remind us that upcycling is not only about reducing waste, but also about elevating the ordinary into the extraordinary. A potion bottle may not contain magic in the literal sense, yet it contains something equally powerful, the spark of wonder in the eyes of those who see it. And so, in the heart of autumn, your garden becomes an enchanted apothecary, where glass and light meet to weave stories that never fade. There is something timeless about mushrooms in a fairy tale garden. They carry with them the whispers of folklore, the charm of childhood wonder, and the sense that magic could be hiding just beneath their caps. When autumn arrives, the garden floor is sprinkled with fallen leaves and earthy scents, and it becomes the perfect setting for little surprises. Now imagine egg cartons, simple, fragile, often discarded, transformed into clusters of fairy mushrooms that look as though they've sprung to life from the pages of an enchanted storybook. Each egg cup becomes the rounded top of a mushroom cap. Painted in rich, whimsical colors, crimson red with white dots, golden orange, or soft cream, they immediately catch the eye. With just a little shaping, they take on forms that seem natural, yet otherworldly. Some grow tall and slender, others squat and friendly, forming a miniature village on the forest floor of your garden. Placed on a bed of moss or tucked into the base of a shrub, These fairy mushrooms blend seamlessly with their surroundings. Pebbles laid carefully create winding pathways between them, as though tiny feet might have walked there recently. Perhaps a fairy left a glowing lantern at the entrance, or a gnome built a ladder to climb to the top of the largest mushroom. The imagination fills the rest of the story, and suddenly the garden feels alive with unseen inhabitants. The beauty of this upcycling idea is that it costs almost nothing, just discarded egg cartons and a touch of creativity. Yet its impact is powerful. Children are delighted by the discovery of mushroom villages in unexpected corners. Adults, too, smile at the whimsy, remembering fairy tales told long ago. The mushrooms remind us that even the most fragile and overlooked materials can become treasures when seen through the lens of imagination. In the golden light of autumn, the mushrooms cast soft shadows over fallen acorns and chrysanthemums. Aster blooms nod gently above them, while pumpkins rest nearby, making the whole setting feel like a celebration of the season. The humble egg carton, often forgotten, now has a second life, a magical one, filled with charm and quiet wonder. It is not just recycling. It is storytelling made visible, rooted in the soil of your own garden. There is something irresistibly charming about a Hobbit doorway. Round, inviting, and deeply connected to the earth, it feels like a portal to another world. In the heart of autumn, when the air carries the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke, even discarded objects can take on that same magical quality. Imagine an old tire ring, once rugged and forgotten, now transformed into a hobbit entrance that seems to whisper of stories and hidden dwellings beneath the soil. The circular frame of the tire provides the perfect outline for the rounded hobbit door. Painted in earthy tones, perhaps a deep green or rustic red, the door nestles neatly within the tire's ring. Golden hinges gleam softly, and a small handle shaped like an acorn invites the curious to come closer. Around the frame, moss creeps naturally, while ivy winds its way upward as though nature itself is trying to reclaim and beautify the structure. Placed against a garden slope, the tire doorway appears almost believable, as if a family of hobbits really does live inside, unseen yet always present. Pumpkins scattered nearby suggest harvest time, while chrysanthemums nod their heavy heads in the crisp autumn air. The entire corner of the garden becomes a scene of enchantment, as though you've stumbled into a hidden page from Tolkien's world. Children are captivated by it. They might knock gently, half expecting someone to answer. Adults, too, are drawn to its whimsy, reminded of evenings spent reading fantasy novels or watching beloved films. The doorway feels alive, not because it leads anywhere real, but because it opens the imagination. What makes this creation remarkable is how little it demands. An old tire ring, often left to rust, becomes the heart of a magical garden installation. It proves that even the most unlikely items can hold beauty when placed in the right context. In autumn light, with golden leaves carpeting the ground and shadows stretching long, the doorway looks not like trash but like treasure, an echo of worlds beyond our own. And so, the tire, once forgotten, becomes a circle of wonder. It reminds us that magic often lives in the overlooked, waiting patiently for someone to notice. Every enchanted village needs a post house. It is where messages of love, adventure, and secrets travel from one world to another. In an autumn garden, surrounded by golden leaves and the scent of earth, an old mailbox finds a second life. Once it carried ordinary letters, now it delivers whispers of magic. With just a little imagination, the mailbox becomes a fairy post house, an unexpected treasure hidden among flowers and vines. Picture the scene: the old metal box, once dull and rusted, has been revived with a coat of rustic paint. Tiny windows have been added to its sides, glowing softly with the suggestion of warm light inside. A miniature wooden door rests at its base, just large enough for a fairy to slip through. Moss grows across the roof, and ivy twines upward, softening the edges and giving it the look of a house that has stood in the garden for centuries. A small sign hangs proudly: Fairy Mail. Peeking from the slot are tiny envelopes, each hand-painted with delicate patterns, waiting to be carried away by unseen messengers. Perhaps they hold invitations to an autumn harvest feast, or little notes of gratitude passed between woodland creatures. To a child, this scene is alive with possibility. To an adult, it is a gentle reminder of how delightful it is to believe, even for a moment, in the unseen. The mailbox blends naturally into its surroundings. Chrysanthemums bloom at its feet, pumpkins rest against the post, and fallen leaves scatter across the pathway. The whole scene feels like a frozen storybook illustration, yet it stands quietly in the corner of a real garden. As twilight approaches, a lantern flickers nearby, casting shadows that make the mailbox look even more alive. This upcycling idea transforms more than just an object. It changes the way we look at everyday things. A forgotten mailbox is no longer a piece of scrap. It becomes a doorway to stories, a reminder that magic exists wherever we choose to see it. And in autumn, with its air of mystery and change, the fairy post house feels especially at home. There is a certain magic in books, the way they hold stories, knowledge, and imagination all within their pages. In a whimsical garden, books can hold something else entirely: life. Imagine coffee cans, once filled with the aroma of morning comfort, reborn as enchanted spellbooks. Their metal shells become covers painted with aged textures, titles in shimmering gold, and mysterious runes across their spines. But instead of parchment and ink, these spellbooks bloom with flowers, herbs, and autumn foliage. Stacked together on a rustic wooden bench, the cans disguise themselves as a miniature library for wizards and fairies. One book might be titled Elixirs and Enchantments, another Herbs of Autumn, and yet another Secrets of the Garden. Their pages may not turn, but from their top sprout marigolds, sedum, and ivy, living proof that stories can indeed grow. Placed against a mossy wall or tucked into a shaded corner, the spellbook planters look as though they've always belonged there. The ivy spills like flowing script, chrysanthemums bloom like illuminated letters, and pumpkins rest at their base like punctuation marks in an unfolding tale. In twilight, a string of fairy lights woven between them creates the glow of a library alive with secrets. Children might imagine that these spellbooks hold real magic, that by watering the plants, they are feeding ancient spells. Adults may smile at the whimsy, reminded of fairy tales read by candlelight or the magical libraries of fantasy worlds. The planters become more than upcycled coffee cans. They are portals to memory and imagination. What makes this creation remarkable is how seamlessly it merges two worlds, the everyday and the enchanted. A simple can, painted and disguised, gains a new identity, one that carries beauty and storytelling into the garden. It is a reminder that recycling is not only practical but also poetic. In autumn, when the garden is filled with fading blooms and golden light, the Spellbook planters stand as quiet guardians of imagination. They tell us that even the most ordinary objects, like a coffee can carry extraordinary stories, if only we choose to see them. Autumn is a season of color, the fiery reds, deep golds, and soft browns that paint the landscape. For many, fallen leaves are a symbol of beauty and change. But what if this charm could be recreated in a way that also gives new life to something often wasted? Enter the humble plastic grocery bag, a material that usually feels disposable, now transformed into autumn leaf garlands that shimmer with whimsical magic. The process begins with imagination. A bag, once used to carry groceries, is cut and shaped into delicate leaves. Each one is painted or tinted with shades of autumn, maple reds, oak browns, golden yellows. Some even sparkle with metallic touches, catching the light in unexpected ways. When strung together, they form a garland that dances softly in the breeze, as though the garden itself is alive with color. Draped along a rustic fence, the garlands frame the garden like nature's jewelry. Twined around pergola posts or archways, they invite visitors to step into a space that feels both celebratory and enchanted. In twilight, with fairy lanterns glowing nearby, the leaves seem to shimmer, creating an atmosphere that blurs the line between reality and storybook charm. Children may believe that fairies crafted the garlands as part of their autumn festival. Adults admire the artistry, surprised to learn that something as ordinary as plastic bags could create such beauty. The garlands become a conversation piece, an example of how recycling can go beyond practicality to become art. Placed beside chrysanthemums and pumpkins, the leaf garlands elevate the season's natural beauty. They echo the falling leaves scattered across the ground, but with a twist of permanence. Unlike real leaves, these will not crumble or fade. They will continue to tell their story year after year, reminding us of the creative power of upcycling. In the end, the garlands are more than decoration. They are symbols of transformation, turning waste into wonder, and ordinary into extraordinary. In the glow of autumn, they celebrate not just the season, but the imagination that makes every garden magical. In every magical village, there are towers, tall silhouettes that rise above the rooftops, glowing with light when dusk falls. In the garden, these towers can be created from the most unexpected of materials, cardboard rolls. Simple remnants from paper towels or gift wrap, often tossed away without thought, now stand proudly as candle towers that transform an ordinary corner into an enchanted autumn fairy tale. Each roll becomes a tower with a personality of its own. Cut-out windows allow light to spill softly into the night, while pointed roofs crafted from painted paper complete the whimsical look. When LED lights or candles are placed inside, the towers glow warmly, like little beacons of magic scattered throughout the garden. Grouped together at varying heights, the towers resemble a miniature village. Perhaps one belongs to a wizard who brews potions, another to a watchful fairy who keeps an eye on the changing seasons, and yet another to a storyteller whose tales fill the autumn air. The imagination runs wild, and the garden feels alive with hidden characters. Autumn adds a special magic to these towers. Fallen leaves gather around their bases, while ivy climbs up their sides as though nature itself wants to join in the story. Pumpkins sit nearby like silent guardians, and chrysanthemums bloom richly, their petals glowing in the tower light. At twilight, the scene feels as though it has leapt straight from the pages of a fairy tale. What makes this creation especially charming is its simplicity. Cardboard rolls are accessible to everyone, yet when transformed, they lose all trace of their humble origin. Instead, they become objects of wonder that delight both children and adults alike. Children may believe fairies live inside, lighting their candles as night falls. Adults admire the creativity, surprised that something so fragile could look so timeless. In the end, the cardboard roll candle towers are not just upcycled crafts. They are symbols of imagination, proof that even the most overlooked materials can bring warmth, beauty, and storytelling into our lives. In autumn, when the world glows golden, these towers remind us that light can always be found in unexpected places. Clay pitchers have always carried stories. They once held water, milk, or wine, serving families through countless seasons. Their earthy tones feel timeless, connecting us to the soil and traditions of old. But when a pitcher cracks or breaks, its life often seems to end. In a whimsical autumn garden, however, even a broken pitcher can begin anew, transformed into a fairy house that whispers tales of enchantment. Imagine an old clay vessel resting at the base of a tree. Its surface is weathered, its rim chipped, yet within these imperfections lies its charm. A small arched doorway is cut into its side, painted in rustic colors, perhaps framed with pebbles or moss. Tiny windows glow warmly as if a fire flickers inside. Ivy curls gently around its edges, while moss settles on top, making the pitcher look as though it has stood there for centuries, sheltering unseen inhabitants. Placed among chrysanthemums and asters, the pitcher becomes part of the natural rhythm of the garden. Pumpkins lie close by, their orange hues complementing the earthy clay. Fallen leaves scatter across the scene, adding a layer of autumn's golden touch. At twilight, fairy lanterns twinkle near the entrance, giving the house a lived-in feeling, as though its residents might return at any moment with baskets full of herbs. Children who stumble upon this creation might kneel down, pressing their faces close to the windows, imagining who lives inside. Adults, too, feel drawn to the charm. Perhaps it reminds them of old tales, fairies hiding in the hedgerows, or travelers in Hobbiton passing by a humble home. The pitcher house becomes more than decoration, it becomes a vessel of imagination, carrying new stories instead of liquids. The beauty of this idea lies in its balance of simplicity and magic. A clay pitcher, whether whole or broken, is accessible and familiar. Yet in the garden, it transforms into something extraordinary. It blends so naturally with the flowers and soil that one might believe it has always been there. In autumn, when the world feels like a story unfolding in shades of gold and crimson, the clay pitcher fairy house becomes a symbol of continuity, a reminder that even in endings, there are new beginnings filled with wonder. pathways have always carried symbolism. They guide us, connect spaces, and invite us to explore. In a whimsical autumn garden, pathways are not just practical, they are invitations into imagination. Now picture broken baking sheets, once used in kitchens for everyday meals, transformed into fairy pathways that weave through a world of enchantment. At first glance, the sheets may look unremarkable, bent, scratched, even cracked. But once repurposed, they become stepping stones of another kind. Painted in rustic tones or left weathered for natural charm, the sheets are cut and shaped into tiles that form winding paths across the soil. When placed among moss and pebbles, they appear ancient, like remnants of an old fairy kingdom rediscovered beneath the autumn leaves. As twilight falls, the pathway glows with soft light from lanterns placed at intervals. Chrysanthemums bloom richly beside it, their petals catching the warm glow. Pumpkins lie along the edges, completing the autumnal harmony. Fallen acorns dot the path, adding playful details as though forest creatures might have left them there. The pathway feels alive, a place where stories unfold with every step. Children might imagine the path leads to a secret gathering spot for fairies, where they dance under the moonlight. Adults might see in it a metaphor, that even broken things can still guide us, that discarded objects can find a new life in beauty. Each baking sheet, once destined for the trash, now becomes a part of a story that blends seamlessly with nature. The charm lies not only in its visual impact but also in its unexpected origin. What was once an object of utility becomes an object of wonder. The pathway makes visitors pause, look closer, and appreciate how creativity can transform the ordinary into something extraordinary. In autumn, when the garden is already alive with golden light and shifting colors, the baking sheet pathway adds a touch of mystery. It suggests that every corner of the garden might lead to a new adventure. And just like in fairy tales, the path does not reveal all its secrets at once. It invites exploration, step by step, in a journey where magic is always just around the bend. Fire has always been at the heart of gatherings. It warms, it illuminates, and it draws people closer. In a whimsical autumn garden, even a discarded rusty grill can be reborn as a source of magic, not for cooking meals anymore, but as an enchanted fire pit that glows with warmth and imagination. Picture an old barbecue grill, its metal weathered and worn from years of use. At first, it seems ready for the junkyard. But placed in the garden, clean just enough to reveal its character, it transforms. Inside, fairy lights or faux embers glow softly, casting a warm orange light that flickers like real fire. Around the rim, moss grows naturally, while ivy drapes gracefully, softening the edges of its rugged frame. The fire pit becomes the centerpiece of an autumn evening. Pumpkins sit close by, their curves catching the glow. Chrysanthemums bloom richly around it, their colors deepened by the firelight. Acorns scatter across the ground, as though dropped by woodland creatures who also gather here. The air feels alive, not only with warmth but with possibility, as if fairies themselves might circle the fire, dancing unseen in the twilight. Children are enchanted by its glow. To them, it is a magical hearth where stories begin, where spells are cast, or where fairy councils meet under the stars. Adults are drawn to its unexpected beauty, surprised that something as ordinary as a broken grill could create such an atmosphere. It becomes more than decoration, it becomes a symbol of togetherness, a place where imagination gathers just as people do around a fire. The magic of this creation lies in its balance of rawness and refinement. The rust tells a story of time, while the glow adds the illusion of life. Together, they create a piece that feels authentic, whimsical, and utterly at home in an autumn garden. In the end, the enchanted fire pit is not about flames but about warmth, the kind that sparks in the heart when we see possibility where others see waste. In its glow, autumn nights become longer, softer, and filled with the quiet magic that only creativity can bring. Every garden has walls, fences, or corners that feel plain, waiting for something to bring them alive. In autumn, when colors fill the air and imagination runs free, even the smallest pieces of waste can become art. Plastic bottle caps, so often overlooked, suddenly find a purpose, reborn as mosaic walls that shimmer with whimsy and creativity. Imagine gathering caps of every shade: fiery reds, golden yellows, earthy browns, deep greens. Once scattered and meaningless, they now form a palette richer than any paint box. Arranged carefully on a garden wall, they create patterns of autumn leaves, spirals, or even the rounded doorway of a hobbit home. Up close, each cap still shows its humble origin, but from a distance, the mosaic comes together as something breathtaking. The wall becomes a storybook canvas. Perhaps it depicts a swirling breeze carrying leaves across the season. Perhaps it forms the shape of a tree alive with fairy windows in its trunk. Or perhaps it tells of a magical path that winds into another world. Whatever the design, it transforms not only the wall but the entire garden space. Ivy climbs alongside the mosaic, softening its edges, while chrysanthemums bloom at its base. Pumpkins rest casually against the wall, echoing the colors within the design. As twilight falls, fairy lanterns or string lights above cast a soft glow, making the mosaic glimmer with life. The scene feels alive, as if the wall itself has begun to breathe stories into the garden air. Children may trace the shapes with their fingers, imagining fairies hiding within the colors. Adults admire the artistry, struck by how something so ordinary, plastic caps, could become so extraordinary. The mosaic becomes a conversation piece, proof that creativity thrives where others see only waste. What makes this creation particularly powerful is its permanence. Unlike fragile crafts, the mosaic can endure seasons, standing proudly as both decoration and statement. It tells visitors that beauty can be found anywhere, even in the smallest discarded objects. In autumn, surrounded by golden light and crisp air, the bottle cap wall does more than decorate, it inspires. It shows us that the stories we tell with our hands can transform not just objects, but the very spaces we live in. There's something about autumn that feels like the perfect season for a little mischief and magic. The air is crisp, pumpkins line the porches, and the nights seem alive with mystery. In the heart of the season, even the smallest of objects can be transformed into something extraordinary. Take, for instance, a simple yogurt cup. Small, disposable, and often overlooked, yet in the right hands, it becomes a miniature cauldron bubbling with enchantment. Picture these tiny vessels painted black, their surfaces textured to resemble cast iron. A delicate wire bent into a handle turns each into a perfect little pot, ready for spells and potions. Some are filled with colored gems or glowing resin, imitating bubbling brews. Others hide fairy lights that flicker softly in the twilight, giving the illusion of warmth and fire beneath. Arranged together, they create a scene straight out of a wizard's kitchen or a fairy's harvest festival. Placed on a mossy stone table or tucked among garden pathways, these mini cauldrons become an unexpected delight. Surrounded by marigolds and sedum autumn joy, they blend naturally with the garden while adding a playful spark of imagination. Pumpkins resting nearby complete the autumnal picture, while ivy creeps gracefully as though protecting the cauldron's secrets. Children may crouch low, eyes wide, imagining what spells are brewing inside. Perhaps one cauldron holds a potion to make leaves shimmer longer in the breeze, while another keeps the frost at bay until winter truly calls. Adults smile at the whimsy, reminded of old stories of witches, wizards, and magical nights lit by fire and laughter. The charm lies in their simplicity. Yogurt cups are accessible everywhere, and yet, with a little creativity, they take on an entirely new life. They remind us that upcycling isn't just about reusing, it's about reimagining. By reshaping what we discard, we also reshape how we see the world around us. In autumn, the yogurt cup mini cauldrons are more than crafts. They are invitations to believe in magic, to celebrate imagination, and to see wonder in the everyday. And in the golden glow of the season, they become little beacons of joy, proving that even the humblest of objects can hold the brightest spark of enchantment. There is an old charm in teapots. They once carried warmth to the table, pouring comfort into cups shared among family and friends. When they break, most see only fragments and loss. But in a whimsical autumn garden, even a cracked teapot can take on new life, as a hobbit fairy entrance that whispers of hidden worlds beneath the leaves. Imagine a teapot resting at the base of a garden wall. Its side is broken open, but instead of ruin, it becomes a door, a rounded entryway painted with rustic details. Perhaps a small wooden frame surrounds it, and a pebble path leads up to it as though fairies themselves have walked this way for years. The spout rises proudly, now serving as a chimney, with a curl of moss suggesting smoke drifting into the autumn sky. Placed among chrysanthemums and pumpkins, the teapot looks at home. Ivy creeps over its surface, softening the edges, while marigolds bloom brightly around it. Fallen leaves scatter across its entrance, adding the golden hues of autumn to its charm. At twilight, when a lantern glows nearby, the entrance feels alive, as though a hobbit or garden fairy might step out carrying a basket of herbs or a glowing acorn. Children are quick to kneel beside it, peeking curiously into the opening, half expecting to see tiny furniture or hear faint laughter from within. Adults, too, pause to admire the whimsy. A broken teapot, once useless, now becomes a vessel of imagination. It reminds us that magic is not only in the extraordinary but in the everyday, waiting to be seen by those willing to look closer. The beauty of this creation lies in its honesty. The cracks are not hidden, instead, they are transformed into character. They tell a story of age, of use, of second chances. In the garden, the teapot does not stand out as trash but blends gracefully into the rhythm of nature, where nothing is wasted and everything has purpose. In autumn, when the season itself speaks of transformation, the teapot fairy entrance becomes a symbol. It tells us that endings can be beginnings, and that even the smallest doorway can open into a world filled with wonder.
Every worn shoe carries a story. Each scuff and crease speaks of journeys taken, roads walked, and memories made. When shoes grow too old to wear, most are discarded. Yet in a whimsical autumn garden, even the most tattered pair can find a second life, transformed into wizard plant holders that seem to belong in a tale of spells and enchantment. Picture an old leather boot, its sole worn thin, its laces frayed. Instead of being forgotten, it now overflows with green herbs and golden marigolds. The cracks in its surface are softened by moss, while ivy spills gently from its edges. Painted on the sides are tiny runes and magical symbols, as though the shoe once belonged to a traveling wizard who left behind both footprints and secrets. Placed at the base of a rustic fence or nestled among pumpkins, the shoes blend naturally into the garden. They look like relics from another world, abandoned not from where but from adventures too grand to recount. Perhaps the wizard walked away, leaving behind these enchanted shoes as gifts for the fairies who now tend the plants within. In the fading light of autumn, the shoes glow with character. Fairy lanterns placed nearby cast warm shadows, making the shoes appear alive, as though at any moment, they might shuffle softly and walk on their own. Children are enchanted by the thought, imagining the shoes wandering through the garden at night, carrying their flowers like little torches of color. Adults, too, smile at the whimsy, surprised that such a simple transformation could hold so much charm. The beauty of this creation lies in its honesty. The shoes are not polished or disguised, their wear is celebrated, their history visible. This makes them feel authentic, like artifacts rather than decorations. They remind us that even the most ordinary objects can hold magic when given a new role. In autumn, when the garden itself feels like a stage for stories, the wizard plant shoes stand as symbols of journeys past and wonders yet to come. They invite us to see value where others see none, and to believe, just for a moment, that even worn shoes can walk us into a world of enchantment. There is beauty in imperfection, and in every crack there is a story waiting to be told. In the heart of an autumn garden, cracked ceramic pieces, once bowls, plates, or tiles, are reborn as fairy garden ruins. They no longer serve the table, but instead whisper of ancient places, where fairies once lived and where magic lingers still. Imagine a broken ceramic bowl, its edges jagged and worn by time. Instead of being discarded, it is nestled into the earth, half buried like a relic of a forgotten kingdom. Moss grows thick across its surface, ivy winds through its cracks, and tiny flowers bloom where walls have fallen. To the casual eye, it looks like a ruin discovered by chance, but to those who linger, it feels like the remains of a story long ago. Placed together, the shards become miniature castles or temples, their broken arches framing the light of autumn sunsets. Fallen leaves gather at their feet, while pumpkins and chrysanthemums surround them, echoing the richness of the season. The ruins seem to belong, as if the garden itself had grown around them for centuries.
Children see these ruins as playgrounds for imagination, perhaps homes for secret fairy families or meeting places for woodland councils. Adults admire the poetry of it, how something broken can still be beautiful, how fragments can become part of a greater whole. The ruins remind us that time leaves marks not of loss but of character, and that even in decay, there is wonder. At twilight, lanterns placed near the ruins glow warmly, making the cracks sparkle like hidden treasures. Shadows stretch across the garden, and suddenly the scene feels alive, as though spirits of the past wander quietly among the flowers. The magic of this creation lies in its humility. The pieces are not reshaped or hidden, they remain broken. And yet, in their brokenness, they become something new, a stage for imagination, a story written in moss and light. In autumn, when the world itself celebrates change, the fairy garden ruins remind us of resilience and beauty in imperfection. They stand quietly in the garden, not as reminders of what was lost, but as monuments to what can still be found, magic, mystery, and the endless stories that grow from the earth itself. Every journey begins with a suitcase. For most, it is a vessel of travel, filled with clothes, keepsakes, or memories. But in a whimsical autumn garden, a vintage suitcase becomes something entirely different, a portable fairy garden, carrying not garments but enchantment itself. Picture an old suitcase, its leather worn, its metal clasps dulled by time. Open it, and instead of emptiness, you find a miniature landscape, moss spreading like soft carpets, pebbled pathways winding through tiny hobbit doors, and chrysanthemums blooming in bright autumn hues. Ivy spills over the edges as though the garden is too alive to be contained. Placed on a wooden bench or nestled beside pumpkins, the suitcase feels like a portal to another world. Tiny lanterns glow inside, casting warm light on fairy houses crafted from pebbles and broken pottery. Perhaps a small cauldron rests in one corner, bubbling with an imagined potion, while a cluster of marigolds serves as the garden's autumn festival centerpiece. Children are enchanted instantly. To them, the suitcase is proof that fairy worlds exist, tucked secretly into everyday objects. They imagine carrying it with them, opening it anywhere to release a garden wherever they go. Adults, too, pause in wonder, touched by the nostalgia of travel and the whimsy of unexpected magic. The beauty of the suitcase fairy garden lies in its mobility. Unlike a fixed corner of the garden, this creation can be moved, carried, even displayed indoors when the weather grows cold. It becomes a treasure chest of creativity, one that transforms not only the suitcase itself but also the way we think of gardens. A garden is no longer bound to soil, it becomes a story you can hold in your hands. In autumn, when the season itself feels like a journey into change, the suitcase fairy garden resonates deeply. It symbolizes exploration, imagination, and the ability to carry beauty with us wherever we go. The vintage clasps may be rusted, the leather worn, but within lies a world blooming with life and wonder. And so, the suitcase closes with a promise that magic is portable, stories can travel, and even the smallest garden can become a companion on life's many adventures. And that brings us to the end of From Trash to Enchanted Autumn Fairy Corners. We've seen bottles become glowing potion jars, milk jugs turn into hobbit doors, and even broken ceramics reborn as fairy ruins. Each creation proves that beauty can rise from the simplest scraps. If one of these ideas caught your imagination, tell me in the comments, which one would you love to try in your own garden? Don't forget to hit subscribe, give this video a like, and share your thoughts below. Every comment becomes a spark that inspires new creations, and your support truly keeps this dream alive. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and until next time, may your garden always be filled with magic.